Before the video starts, I really want to ask you guys one question. Do any of you guys actually play Guild Wars 2 or have heard of it? I was just really interested in that, so yeah, drop your answer down below. Anyways, welcome back to Planet Coaster Vaddjian. And today we are, well, basically just expanding the town as we do for at least 3 episodes now. I'm not really going to give a schedule for how long it's going to take because I really don't know. And I'm just having fun. And I hope you guys are having fun as well. Anyways, back into the video. You might have noticed in a lot of buildings that I in some way try to either give just a little bit of a roof over the windows or give them shutters, and that is mainly in the thought of because it's in an Arctic / snowy biome that obviously there is going to be really cold days. There are going to be days that there will maybe be even a snowstorm that even those steam pits wouldn't be able to really keep the cold out. So to make sure that the windows are safe, you would close the shutters or, you know, get a little bit of protection from the roof above the window. So that's the main thought behind that, and it's also, it looks kind of fun. Like in the games itself, obviously because it's mostly, well, this architecture is mostly seen in the deserty regions, you of course wouldn't have really shutters per se. Maybe if it's like a real desert that they are built in to keep out the sand, here it's to keep out the snow. So yeah, in the real game you probably wouldn't see the shutters, or well, you would probably see a little bit of those roofs, but not much. Here it's really just like taking inspiration from the game but setting it really in this new biome, which this architecture obviously isn't really made for or designed for. But over time they would develop like new ways to really fit into this biome without losing that architectural side that they brought with them. As I said in the last video, the thought is really that this is a group of Vabbians that, well, went exploring and found this place with the steam pits and settled down there. You get people who are really used to like a hot, deserty, almost tropical environment set into this cold, almost barren wasteland. And this town is really just like, how would they come up with new ways to survive here? And it's really fun to think like that, to take someone or something and put it in the complete opposite region or situation. Because if you think about it, we humans, or I know in the game there are other races, but Vabbi is really a human region. Like it was that like that in the first game, and now in the second game it's also like that, because in 250 years, well, you can wipe someone out, but you wouldn't really have something to rule over. I'm getting really close into spoiler territory for the game, so I'm kind of trying to go back and onto that. But to go back into what I was talking about, humans are actually a very flexible race. Like we can adapt to new situations really fast actually. Like drop us into the cold and we will immediately know, even if we weren't taught it or in any other way had knowledge of it, but we would still immediately seek warmth and, you know, shelter, and drop us in the heat and we will immediately seek shelter from the sun, we will seek shelter from the heat, we will seek means to survive. So in a way we are very flexible. So to think that a village like Vaddjian could actually also exist in the real world, not just in Guild Wars 2. Of course, in the real world they wouldn't have magic to help them along the way, so the progress to build Vaddjian would probably be a lot slower in the real world than in the game. But magic is just another tool in the entire shed of what you can do. Even in the game, it's not really like magic rules everything. It's just another thing that you use. And even without magic, you can fare quite well. Now I really think, what would have happened if magic was a real thing, even in our world? Would we have floating cities and everything, or would we have turned everything to shit already? I'm trying to not make my videos political or something, so I'm going to stop there. But to get back on the topic of the shutters, looking back on it with thinking of magic and how it's really interwoven into the fabric of Guild Wars 2, they aren't really necessary actually. Because there are stories about these really powerful sorcerers or just magic users who could do incredible things, such as keeping a village such as Vaddjian warm even if it was basically arctic and barren all surrounding it. I mean, there are floating palaces and floating castles. Like in the core game you have Garanov, which is a floating castle just because of one wizard. I don't know if he keeps the castle afloat, but he certainly has a far reach when it comes to his magic. And then in Guild Wars Path of Fire, which is the expansion that lets you go to Vabbi, which is the region with the architecture Vaddjian is, well, inspired from, not really completely copied, because of course Guild Wars 2 scale is quite a bit larger than Blanco scale, and Blanco scale is quite a bit larger than Peep scale. I think, yeah, we call them peeps in the game, the visitors. So of course it's inspired from Guild Wars 2 but taken into, yeah, another way. But the place that Vaddjian is inspired from is actually this palace that is kept under control of a djinn, and in real life I think they are close to spirits and there are all kinds of stories surrounding them. And in Guild Wars 2 I'm not really sure where they really fit. Like, they are these floating beings with, I think, 4 arms wrapped like a mummy almost, and I don't really know where Guild Wars places them. I think they are close to spirits but not entirely, like they are usually connected to the environment, so you might see them as like spirits of the environment, or like spirits of the river, spirits of those plains. I don't know where Guild Wars places them, but they are very powerful magic users, and the djinn that keeps the palace that Vaddjian was inspired by, really, I don't know how he does it. And then there's a djinn further on in the game which I don't want to go into because it might be spoilery, but basically he kept a portion of the land safe from a massive corruption thing. And not corruption as in, you know, with officials or so, but really corruption as in death, decay, everything. So yeah, the shutters aren't really necessary if you think of the magic that is in Guild Wars 2. But for me it's really just a nice touch of that there are also non-magic users in this village, which is normal. But these would also need to survive, and maybe this village was founded by, well, not really powerful magic users, and, you know, needed defenses against the cold, against the climate that they were in. Maybe later it got this powerful magic user, or maybe it still doesn't. It gives really an option of where to go with this village, because if I didn't include shutters, then the only really logical reasoning behind them not having shutters or anything to protect, well, basically holes in the wall. Windows are technically, they are holes in the wall that we fill up with glass, and I think actually in Vabbi or just the Alona region, they don't use glass a lot, so they're basically holes in the wall. But for Blanco reasoning, of course the glass is used, but then still, it's still a vulnerable place for draft to get through, to, you know, get cold air coming into your house, and obviously you do not want that, because if it's really cold, you might die overnight because you would freeze to death. So there is, of course, the necessity to keep these vulnerable places in the house safe from the outside. And also there's the other reasoning for the shutters is security, because even in Guild Wars crime is still a thing, so shutters can keep burglars or anything else unwanted out, not just the cold. So that's why these shutters are a thing. There are two reasons: security from, well, unwanted people or things, because there are also monsters in Guild Wars 2, so you also need to protect your house from those, but also from the unwanted climate. So yeah, I'm going to try and keep the talk of shutters to that. Let's go into a different topic, because I don't think it's really fun to continue talking about shutters for the entirety of the video. So on to the next topic of today's video, which is the buildings that I'm building. Because you might have noticed that they are a bit more chaotic than previous videos buildings or houses. Mainly because I wanted to give the village a more dynamic feel. Because you can see it in houses, but you can also see it in the village, that you can actually kind of relate it to a tree. Where as it grows older it gets more rings. You can see that in the village that as time goes on, more buildings, houses are built on the outskirts so that the village grows. You can really see it in older villages or cities. And you can also see that in a house or just any building. Mostly in houses though, because every person that lives in that house kinda adds something to the building. You might have, like, let's say the first inhabitant of the house is a smith. He might have an open space on the ground floor for his forge and everything. Then maybe the next inhabitant of the house is a merchant. He will maybe rent out that space that the smith used, but will build a more luxurious chambers on top of it. Then you might get the next inhabitant who adds even more to that. And then the next might even take some away. Especially in older houses you see just layers of the people that live there. And so I really wanted that to shine through in this, or just the whole village, that it's not completely new. There have been generations living here and they have all added to the overall feel of the village. Even if that feel can sometimes be chaotic. But then I don't think chaotic necessarily means bad. But chaos can also be a good thing when it relates to buildings, because chaotic can also bring life to a certain place. It can bring a bit of variations in the types of buildings and in the building styles. And chaotic, again, when it relates to buildings, can spruce up a place that would otherwise be a bit bland. Because when you have all these generations adding something to a building and sometimes taking something away, the building itself becomes sort of alive. It gets a personality, and I would say that's a good thing. To not have just a building with no soul, as it were. So might be a bit of stress, but I think chaotic when it comes to buildings is usually good. Though there's also, like, there might be some structural weaknesses when people keep adding things to buildings and then also sometimes removing things. So, you know, it's seeking the balance in between good chaos and bad chaos. But then I think that's everywhere, just finding the balance. So to go back onto the buildings, yeah, they are chaotic, but they are meant to be. And it's also fun to just experiment a bit with buildings, because in Plant Coaster you learn the most when you just go wild. I went wild with domes and custom walls, and I think I have improved, and I think if you guys try it out, you will also improve in building. But that's my building tip for today. I'm curious, how did you guys improve your buildings, or do you have any tips for any newcomers to the game on how to improve buildings? Because it took me a long while to actually start with custom pieces and everything, and to make custom walls, custom roofs. For me it was more though laziness and just, you know, not having enough patience to do that. But I do see that for others it might be because they really don't know how to do it. So if you guys have any tips to share, please share them in the comment section. Anyways, the next topic of today's video is the size of Vaddjian, because I keep calling it a village, but it's more closer to a town, because not so much in the size, because it's still going to be, well, not that large when you look at just the covered floor space, but in density, because the buildings are a bit taller, and so you might see it as a town. But if you look at the size, just ground level, you might think it's a village. But mostly what I mean with the size of Vaddjian is if the entire park is going to be called Vaddjian, or if just the town is going to be called Vaddjian, and that the outer areas will have a completely different name. It would be fun though if the town was called Vaddjian and then the other regions or the other parts of the park will get a different name and kind of relate into the 6 parts of the park, which I try to keep a secret, but any Guild Wars 2 player might already know what I mean with the 6 parts, because I don't keep it a heavy secret. There are lots of clues hidden around in the videos, so anyone who plays Guild Wars 2 might already know what I mean with the 6 parts. But it would be fun to give those outer areas different names relating to what's going to be going on there, because I'm already thinking of, first of all, there needs to be a place where all the building materials came from. There needs to be a place where all the food and supplies come from. So there are already 6 areas a bit in my head, and it would be fun to give those different names, or even if it's just some little change in Vaddjian to give that part of the park a bit of, you know, freedom, a bit of independence, that it's not completely dependent for its identity to Vaddjian. So I think the town will be called Vaddjian, and then the outer areas of the park will be something different. But then to get to the size of the actual town, again, I said it's not going to be very large when it comes to how much ground space it occupies, but it's going to be a bit denser. The further you go from the main square, I want the streets to get a little bit smaller, but not that it's cramped. That's the feeling that I really want to avoid. The feeling that everyone is just cramped together in this small space. So I want to find the balance between, well, cozy, close together, and cramped. And of course there are going to be areas that are more geared towards cramped, because there's always an area that's not as well off as others, and so will have a bit higher density. And there are going to be areas that are actually better off than other areas, which are going to be a little bit less dense. So yeah, it's just finding the balance, and even in such a small space, giving every little area or little building or just the surrounding of a building its own identity. That's actually the main thing I want to get with this park, is to make it one thing as a whole, but also that everything that is in it can also stand a bit on its own, but that it mostly shines when it's together. To explain it a bit better and give you a bit of an idea of what I mean, think of like a diamond necklace. Every diamond is beautiful on its own, but if you see the whole necklace, you really get the wow factor. And that's basically what I want to achieve with this park. I think that's a nice way of putting it. So the questions for today were, first off, do you guys play Guild Wars, or have you heard of it? And the second question was, do you guys have any building tips that you might want to share? Of course, you can comment down anything, not just the answers to these questions. I really encourage you to comment down below anything, of course, related to the video would be nice, but don't be shy. Anyways, hope you liked the video, hope you have an amazing day, and if you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!